Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. We are into the January 2022 week, first week of the new year. There's
Crazy
there's
how
only
fast that got here.
361 days left. We would urge, by the way, the audience, if you haven't, and maybe you skipped it, but we did a New Year's Eve kind of a message on the New Year on our podcast on the 31st, so it's up on the 31st. So if you haven't gone through that, I'd urge you to really go back through that and just listen and understand what we believe God is saying to all of us in terms of how we address the new year, which is to basically seek Him, walk with Him, do the things that we've talked about here, and flip it from what we need to do or the burden on us, but rather walk with Him and let Him deliver to us what we call the covenant beautiful life of blessing, to be a blessing, which is guaranteed. He said, I absolutely will do that, and obviously we gotta walk into that as opposed to us trying to figure it out. So I just urge you to do that as we've talked about this aspect of overcoming worry, fear, and anxiety. If you look at it in a really simple way, which is what we've been discussing, is the reason we stay there. So it's not that, by the way, it's not that bad that we have it. He actually lots of times, interesting enough, when you think of, we just went through Christmas, but he spoke it to both Mary and Joseph. Fear not, fear not. Yeah, I know you're afraid. But it's okay. Fear not, because now I'm going to speak to what I'm going to fulfill for you. So fear not. So fear and worry of man, this is concerning, and even anxiousness about, man, look at the world. It's not a bad thing per se. So it's not about, well, we should stop doing that.
Right.
It's not. That's not the question. It's when we experience that, which we will. What do we do with that? And when the reason we're doing this series is that people stay in that place. I tend to be fearful. I live in fear. I tend to live in worry, and even what they call anxiety, or what we've labeled today as anxiety disorder. Right. That, man, I'm so anxious that I am so distraught that everything about every day is oppressive to me.
And in fact, not only are they living in that, but they're wearing it as an identity. I do believe, because there is so much conversation, which it is good that there's conversation about this now, especially because it has peaked so much during the COVID. Yeah. This past year and a half, 2 years has really peaked anxiety and fear in people. But in that, it has also given people this, kind of unique and falsely grounded identity. Well, I am a worrier. I am anxious. I will always be. This is who I am. This is how I'm wired. This is my struggle. And people are beginning to, because they're comfortable talking about it more now, are beginning to wear it as an identity and not recognize that there is freedom from that God indeed would not have said, fear not, if He could not indeed heal us from that and take us to a new place with that.
Yeah. And it's even the tension of that is that they kind of wear it as identity, but at the same time they say, I really don't enjoy this.
Oh, no, not at all. It's not that they want to, but they buy into this falsehood that this is who they are and this is how it has to be. Yeah,
and the world is getting more intense and more difficult. Conflict is all over the place. We just had our leader calls, and we have leaders that are experiencing, even in their own families, this is what we've described, conflict with relationships, which is what we've been talking about yesterday. about demands on the vaccine. If you need to, and I won't be around you unless, but God's telling them not to, and so they're stuck with, I'm following God, but it's causing me conflict with my family, and
It's
because
so hard.
because of the, and again, I would attribute it to the development of the culture that has gotten more, in a sense, stubborn, stiff, what I call the Bible calls stiff-necked and stubborn. Of I want my way, and I believe
Right.
I'm so right that anybody else that doesn't agree with me, I'm going to come against, and I'm going to punish them. And the punishment can be, I'm not going to see you, I'm not going to be around you, you can't see the grandkids, you can't experience us, or I'm going to be harsh against you. And we can see it in the culture. That there's very little what I would call respectful discussion. It's
Right.
It's not
Right.
about, okay, I do think differently about this. Okay, let's process together. There's a solution there. Let's process until we find a solution. And see, that's God's beautiful way, and I can attest to this, that even in the most difficult, seemingly unattainable solution way, God says, well, I have one.
Right. Right.
And I'll show it to you, and do you have a heart to go and process it? And as we're talking about this issue of relationship, it starts with, by the way, my heart. So we talked yesterday about if you have been kind of confirmed, convicted by the Spirit, you kind of caused this the way
Right.
you handle it. By the way, sometimes it's not even the what, it's how you did it.
Right. And sometimes it's not even the cause, it's your response added to the fire.
Yeah.
It's not that you caused it, but you responded poorly and
Yeah.
added to the fire too.
Yeah, that you you were part of it. We had a retreat that we did in New Hampshire this last fall with our a group that had been learning to abide, and they have learned to abide. And we were talking about overcoming adversity. And it came around to this woman, and she said, I got to confess that I kind of was the cause. That something occurred. And this is in a group scenario, and with her family and friends, etc. She said, what you just said is what happened. Something occurred that wasn't right. My reaction to that was inappropriate, and
Right.
And I didn't resolve it. And interesting enough, she said, I didn't really think much about it other than it bothered me until God reminded me here at this retreat, by the way, honey, you're the one that needs to process this.
Right.
Because
you added some fuel to the fire here.
What you did isn't of me, So, okay. And she said, you know what, I'm gonna go follow these precepts in Matthew 5, and I'm gonna go take care of it. And I'm gonna rejoice because I know God's gonna resolve this and give me freedom. It's not necessarily even, it's not that, well, what they did wasn't completely right and I should have done this. Okay. A lot of times it's just how you did it and the reaction and what you caused. And God said, well, it's on you. I want you to initiate, say you're sorry, and go to the what we call the initiative of offering reconciliation with what do I need to do to make it right for you, and I'm willing to. So when it's on you, you got to do that. Well, most of the time it's the other way around. Is that if my heart is right with God, I'm not really causing a lot of trouble for others because I'm always in a position of, if there's a difficulty that arises, like right now, because I know what it means to walk with God and what I know His heart is that I would immediately just say, wait a second, I know this is difficult, but let's just respectfully process this right now. And so you generally are not the cause of this if you're walking with God.
Right.
Once in a while you are, and even inadvertently, by And for me, it would look like, because I tend to be, let's say, fast doing task. And by the way, I'm a multitasker.
Right.
So I can do lots and lots of things at the same time. So, for example, Linda, we could be home. Linda's talking to me. I could be sitting next to her. I could be watching TV, reading a book on my computer, and listening to her.
Oh, that probably does not go over very well with her.
It does not go over. And she says, "You're not listening to me."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "What?" And I can repeat word for word what she just said, because God's given me a mind, actually, that acts like a tape recorder.
Right.
Now, I didn't listen. I truly didn't listen. I recorded it.
Right. You heard the words.
I heard
that
the
was
words.
about it.
And she's right. She said, "Hey, you're not paying attention to me, and I'm a little bit offended by what you're doing." And the truth is, well, that's on me. That really is on me. And I didn't do it purposely, but okay, sorry.
Right.
I'm going to look to her. Let me turn everything off. Let me pay attention to you. Let me follow through. Yes, you're right. I didn't purposely did it, but I was the cause of it. So I'm gonna leave my altar and go get this resolved right away. So that's on us. But generally speaking, it's where other people, because they're self-centered, are offending us. They don't care about us. They are opposing us. They're even fighting us.
Right.
With I want you to do this, and if you don't do this, I'm gonna come after you. And come after you can be just, I'm gonna withhold any affection from you. I'm gonna be silent with you. I'm gonna make you feel uncomfortable. I'm gonna hurt you in some way. I'm gonna keep pushing you. Lots of different ways that people can hurt us, and particularly in families, it's more pattern related. So what I call unhealthy patterns, and that's like patterns of control. I'm going to control you. And by the way, families, they learn how to do this really good. They learn what's your buttons and how to manipulate us to follow under their control.
And you can see that in siblings, in toddlers.
Yes.
Together.
Yeah.
They already begin learning how to do that, what the buttons are, and how to get their brother or sister just the right way.
Right. When people have heard us, which is going to happen all the time, and we talked yesterday about, sometimes it's momentary because it's a server or it's somebody on the road or it's a teller or just something that's going on, you're not going to see this person again. They made you angry. Yeah, you were properly angry, but let it go. No, you don't need to do much with it. Just let it go. Don't think about it anymore. Move on, because it's momentary. Why? Well, because that person has no more effect on you. It happened, but it was what I call a one-off. It was at a moment.
Right.
Yeah, okay, it happened. Yeah, I'm upset about it, but move on. Let it go.
Right.
Okay, but a lot of other people or situations. I think I was sharing this a little while ago, where we had a person working for us doing some handiwork, and they basically cheated us. It made us mad. It made us mad. So we had to process that, and this guy, is involved here. What do I do with that? I have to let God direct me to, and I want to try to clarify what I'm saying here is that God will resolve this relationship. And I mean resolve, meaning I'm going to understand where it is, and then I can release it so that I don't worry about it, take on the burden of it, or process it any further, because it may not be reconciled because that person's not willing to. You can remember because it takes two parties. But because God has led me to a place where you can now release it, after I've guided you, and now I've resolved it for you, I will resolve this. And this includes, by the way, family situations where the resolution isn't, well, just stop being around them. Well, you can't. You're still part of the family.
Right.
So the question becomes, how do I set up a proper boundary in a way that I don't get harmed anymore by their unhealthiness?
Right.
And God
Right.
says, I care about you and I want you to be healthy. So I'm going to give you the ability to be healthy in an unhealthy place. It's really interesting.
Well, part of that, one thing I've seen, and I won't go into this a whole lot, but in my own experience is um, part of his bringing healing and resolution and all of that is often revealing to me things in my heart that, the reason that they are able to continually poke the bear, or however you want to say that, the reason that will continually get you over and over. When you ask God about that, or when I asked God about it, he began to show me things. Well, there is this underlying, fear of rejection or fear of abandonment, or, whatever it is that's your thing
Yeah.
that I want to meet you in. And when I bring healing to that, then when they poke the bear, it will do nothing to you. You'll be able to love them unconditionally and without expectation,
Right.
and simply accept them for who they are, which is important in family dynamics,
That's right. That's right.
But he had to, that was very intentional on my part. Okay, God, so why do I see a pattern of this particular behavior able to get me riled up and send me into anxiety or whatever. And I had to allow him to reveal that to me, because he knows my heart better than I do.
Yeah.
And then allow him to speak into that.
Yeah. And it could be, as what you're saying there is, an example of that is that a person can have an insecurity and therefore need approval. And I'm driven to receive approval so that, and interesting enough, I'll even take the negative approval that manipulates me to do what they want me to do, so that I get that approval, and I fall into that pattern. By the way, what does that do? That makes you mad.
Right.
So you're kind of stuck with, well, I'd like that to end, and generally this is how it goes. I'd like that to end. Would you have him stop doing that?
Right. But he cares too much to just do that. He'd rather heal our heart.
Yeah, and he says, by the way, see, I'm not manipulating self-will. And that's an important element. Remember,
that's a good point.
The images were of self-will. So think about if he did, and this is what we got to play out a little bit. If God could manipulate self-will, really, then what would the world be like?
It wouldn't be pure love for anything, because we wouldn't be doing things simply out of love for him. But sometimes, I got to be honest with you, sometimes I'm like, wouldn't it just be nice, honestly, if he did get rid of it and just made everything look the way he wanted it to be? Yeah, but I know that's not his heart.
Then that means everybody would be kind and generous.
It sounds pretty nice.
Following Christ, because that's his heart. If he could if he chose to make all that happen, then it would have removed the element of free will, which is the essence of love, including his. Is that I offer you the opportunity to be with me and to let me resolve things. I will let you not. Interesting enough, I love you so much not to force it or make you a robot. You're not robots. You're created beings to have fellowship with me, and fellowship has to be enjoyable by a choice.
Right.
So God says, no, you can't pray that way. Let me give you the wisdom to resolve this, which, by the way, and what you're suggesting is, let me heal your heart about why this button is pushed in you.
Right.
By the way, they're going to keep pushing it. So let's not talk about that. Let me talk about you, and then what to do with that, and how to put you in a position so that you're not receiving that more than you need to be. So it's really interesting. So anyway, as we look at, we're talking now about worry, fear, and anxiety. A lot of times is because there's very difficult relationships that we're in conflict with, we're mad about, they've hurt us, they continue to hurt us, they've done things that just aren't right, and we're struggling with, I want that to change, it's not changing, I'm still part of it, I don't like it, it's causing me stress. Ideally, when that happens, we tend to want to say, is there a way for me just to get out of there and never have this relationship? But then we realize, well, a lot of times, no, that I can't. I guess I'm stuck with this difficult thing. So let's look at, he says, well, I have a solution for that, and let's walk through the truths of that. So go to 2 Corinthians 5, 16 to 21. 2 Corinthians 5, 16 to 21.
From now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh, we regard him thus no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God.
Yeah. So lots in there. It says, first of all, don't regard everything anymore in these relationships according to the flesh. And see, the flesh is gonna operate in a way that somebody has crossed my line of justice. It's unjust per se. What just happened? They did something that wasn't right. They're treating me poorly. They're demanding things that aren't right. There's things I can't agree to. They're coming after me. They're manipulating me. They're making it miserable for me. Yes, the flesh. Okay, he said, don't regard anything according to the flesh. If that happened, what would the flesh want to do?
Get justice itself.
I'm gonna go fix this. See, I'm gonna go make this resolved. Mm-hmm. By the way, if they're not willing to, then I'm gonna come back and do what? I'm gonna punish them.
Make them pay for it.
I'm gonna make them pay for it. Now, by the way, that, interesting enough, at the base of it is, in a sense, it's kind of true. Because, and we'll get into this, is that, see, justice is going to be served, because in a way, and this is, I'm even considering, Kathy, trying to do maybe a whole little retreat or series on this, of how do we live in God's justice? Because
that would be good.
Yeah, because justice is part of the essence of life, and when there's injustice, God says it's going to be fulfilled. It's going to be resolved, and I'm going to do it, including bring punishment to those that aren't willing to repent, and let me heal them. So at the basis,
and we struggle to reconcile the goodness of God with the justice of God. Yet at the same time, we want justice.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dichotomy.
Well,
think about you do a thing on that. It really is an interesting
think about why you want justice. Is that I think it's so ingrained in the very nature. Remember, we're made in the image of God.
Right, and his nature is for justice as well.
His nature is justice, and he fulfills justice, so that he does bring punishment against injustice. So we are, in a sense, following through a little bit on, well, that's a essence of who we are, is, we got to get justice resolved. Now the issue is, he said, don't do it in the flesh, because the way you do it, we individuals, humans, isn't the way that I'm going to do it. And what I care about for you, who's having the injustice against, is God speaking, I want to bring you freedom.
Right.
In a world of injustice. And I can do that, and I will do that, if you allow me. So he said, don't think of it at the pure base level of, I need to get justice. Don't look at it that way. He said, look at it from a spiritual perspective, and let me guide you. And he says, where I'm headed with you is for you to become an ambassador. For what? Reconciliation. You become an ambassador for reconciliation. Okay, now there's lots in there. As an ambassador, think of an ambassador, let's say for the United States, that is right now the ambassador to France.
Right.
What would that ambassador's job be?
He's really acting on behalf of and representing the U.S. to France.
To France.
Yeah.
And issues that are related to each.
Mm-hmm.
And a true ambassador gets his instructions, his marching orders from who?
From the president.
Yeah.
Well,
the government.
Downvote.
Yeah, the State Department, the government. Here's the message I want you to do. Hey, I got a situation. Right. They're doing this, or they're saying this, or we got a problem here. Okay, mm-hmm. Here's my message that I want you to deliver. And most ambassadors, interesting enough, are picked because they have a skill of respect and calmness.
Yes.
If you're hot-headed and angry, well,
it's not a great position.
You probably won't be a very good ambassador because you'll be overreacting all the time. Mm-hmm. But rather, you have a skill of respect, and go deliver this message in respect with a goal of engaging mm-hmm. everybody on both sides to come to a satisfactory resolution without losing the essence of what we know is true.
Right. And in fact, I would say a truly gifted ambassador is truly gifted at listening on both ends, listening to not only what is said, but what is intended behind what is said.
Yeah.
And then when communicating that, listening to the other side as well, and listening to not only what is said, but what is underlying what is said.
Yeah. And so you're to deliver a message. The message is given you by your home country. In this case, it's going to be God for us. And he says, you be the messenger of reconciliation, which means mm-hmm. what? See, it's interesting enough. Think of every situation. Does the ambassador in every situation actually experience reconciliation? See, no.
No.
Why? Well, because it requires both parties to process truth together until you both see a solution that is reconciled. So when he says ambassador for reconciliation, he's implying it's not your role or your burden for the outcome of this process, because that's based on what the other party's going to do. And by the way, it can become, in a sense, so dangerous. Situations. There's countries even right now we don't even have an ambassador for because it's so dangerous because they don't want to talk at all. They want to kill the ambassador. Mm-hmm. They want to destroy the staff. So what does the country do? They pull them.
Right.
For
their own safety.
Then for your safety, because I care about you first, then I'm going to bring you back. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to be a messenger anymore because there's not a willingness to talk anything at all. As a matter of fact, they want to harm you, so I'm going to pull you back. So when he says ambassador, it's a big, big, big understanding of, let me help you, God speaking, what an ambassador is and does. You're a messenger of truth toward reconciliation. And he framed it up by saying, on what basis? On the forgiveness that Christ has performed. Which, remember, we talked about yesterday is what? He has released the need to be perfect, which allows us to now process truth. So that if you're going to go...
Think about that. Yeah. If we were to be able to model that with other people, if we could release them from the expectation and requirement to be perfect, how would we interact differently with them if we truly were able to release them with that kind of forgiveness, with that kind of love?
Yeah. And see... when we take it, remember we're talking about people that are opposing us. What are we releasing? We're releasing the need that they have to do anything. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, see, then the burden is on me. I got to make you do something. And you got to do something to satisfy me.
Right.
And God says, no, forgiveness is
That's not how it works.
releasing that they don't have to do anything. Now, it doesn't mean you're reconciled. But so you be an ambassador of reconciliation. So... as you're an ambassador, there's always two steps. One, have you gone to forgiveness on the same basis that I've been forgiven, which is the nature of Christ, and releasing the need to be perfect to resolve it. So that as you are, remember, you got somebody that's offended you. and you rightfully so are angry. It's okay. It's good.
Right.
He said, okay, first, release that requirement that they have to fix anything so that you're free and able to actually get with them to process truth in a respectful, honorable way. So that otherwise, if you don't have forgiveness and we go back, what do we tend to do?
Oh, we're just going to get right back at it.
We're going to get arguing, debating, fighting, angry. Energy's going to go up, attacking, trying to get them to do what we want them to do. And now you're in a battle. And he says no. And the real simple question is, and here it is. Yes, they've hurt you. I'm not denying that, and I'm not asking you to deny that. Can you be with them and have a respectful discussion about the truth without your anger energy driving it? That means, yes, you have forgiveness. If the answer is no, see, a lot of people I deal with, they say, oh yeah, I've forgiven them. I said, okay. What's your emotion when you think about them or thinking about being with them? Oh, I'm really riled up. You haven't forgiven them yet. You have not forgiven them yet, because you aren't at that place where, yes, I can be respectful and honorable to talk truth. Well, then it means you've forgiven them. So that you got to wait for that. By the way, it's received by God. Let me have it for that person. Then, as an ambassador of reconciliation, what would you go do? Remember, the person, as far as they're concerned, they don't care. They're hurting you. They're not thinking, how do I resolve this? They don't even care. They're actually thinking, what I really want you to do is do what I want, and I'm going to keep hurting you until you do. I mean, so that's not their thought.
There's manipulation and control involved there.
Okay, so if you're going to be an ambassador, what would you do?
Oh, it's a great question. Well, going to God, seeing what he has to say, getting his orders, and coming in with what he has to say, period. And sometimes what he has to say is going to be to come back in with truth and light and grace and love. Other times he may say, I need you to pull back. I'm protecting you for a little while. If he's going to give you that direction. If
he calls you to be an ambassador, which we'll talk about, that there's times where he says, no, actually right now I don't want you to even make this initiation, is you're inviting somebody, is would you be willing to sit down with me and process what's going on here so that we could openly talk about it. I'd like to share with you what's going on for me, and I'd like you to share with me what's going on for you. Would you be willing to do that? See, it's an ambassador is, would you be willing to sit and talk with me? Truth about what happened. And so you're initiating that by saying, I can. Why can you? Well, because I've gone to forgiveness. And I don't have the burden that this has to be resolved in the way that I want to. It's just I'm offering the opportunity for us to get to truth, because remember, they offended you. Remember when we went the other way and said, you go resolve it. How do you resolve it? What can I do to make this right? And you're willing to do it because you're the one who offended it.
Who did it?
You would like that other party to be back to you that same way. When you say, you know what, you've offended me and I'd like to talk about it, and somebody says, oh yeah, sure. And then you say it, and you would like their response to be, man, I understand that completely. I'm so sorry. What can I do to make it right? And then you'd process it through. Now, but I don't see that happen a lot, but that would be ideal, that you're offering to sit down and process it. And this is key, and see, Christ operates this way. We don't alter the truth in order to bring about reconciliation. So that we don't cave and say, okay, I'll just let you keep doing what you're doing, or I'll overlook it, or I will dismiss the truth so that we can have relationship again. Interesting enough, you have just worked against God because you compromised the process, which is speak the truth in love. And the example we have is Christ himself, in that he said, it's not my will that any should perish. Well, that's absolute. He said, I've forgiven everybody at the cross. That's done. Taken away the requirement to be perfect. Now what does he do? I offer you let's sit down and process the truth, which means you're separated from me because you're not perfect. I can't have you be in relationship with me unless you're perfect, but I've solved that problem by going to the cross and offering it to you. I took the punishment on myself. If you recognize you're in that spot and you want to receive what I've done, we can be in relationship. Okay, that's the truth. Does Christ alter that truth?
No.
No.
That is the truth.
Yeah,
yes.
see, he can't, which means then, if people aren't willing to receive that, which interesting enough, most of the world is not willing to, what happens to them?
Well, they're eternally separated.
Yeah, they're
from
eternally,
him.
so they literally go to what's called hell and live eternally separate, eternally, think how long, that's a long time, separated from God. So he says, I don't force reconciliation, I don't alter the truth in order to be reconciled, which, by the way, is my heart. I would like everyone to come to know me, absolutely, 100%. And I'm going to keep working at it throughout in life, even if somebody's on their deathbed and they've rejected their whole life, and then somebody offers them that opportunity one more time, and they say, you know what, I received that, what happens to them?
He rejoices. They will be in heaven with him.
You know, yeah, your life wasn't much, but you get to be with me because now you received that truth. So it's not a one-time only. It's an opportunity, which, by the way, could have implication for us too, that somebody may reject the truth or processing the truth today, but maybe a month from now or 2 months from now they come back and say, yeah, I've been thinking about this. I'd like to revisit that. Great, yeah, sure.
Right.
I'd be happy to. So an ambassador is offering the process. Are you willing to sit down and process truth? God says, don't alter your truth. So if they've hurt you, you got to share that. If they're harming you, you got to share that. If they're opposing you, you got to share that of how they offended you, and share that openly. Hopefully they'll see it and respond to it. They may or may not. So you be an ambassador. Now, there is one more element to this, and this is what you suggested, is it's not a system. So that often when, okay, they've offended me, I have gone to forgiveness, I should go talk to them.
Right.
And what you're suggesting is really important, is before you do that, because don't make it a system. It's, Father, what would you have me do now? I'm willing to go be an ambassador, but what would you have me do now? And a lot of times God will say, at the moment, I don't want you to talk to him at all, because if you do, you'll actually make it worse.
Yeah.
And the
In fact, there was a time, I was just going to say, without going into the details of the whole thing, there was a time period in my life where he had taken me to forgiveness on something. And then I'm like, okay, do I step in and try to reconcile this? And he basically said, no, for your own protection, your purest form of loving them is to pray for them until I say otherwise. And there was an entire year that I actually didn't re-engage, except when he said, okay, do this, say this, send this, so they know they're loved, they know they're seen, and expect that I'm working behind the scenes in ways that you don't see.
Yep.
And it wasn't until almost a full year was over that he opened up the gates for me to begin to re-engage, and he had done some softening and heart work that had to be done on the other side before I could even come and speak that.
Yeah, and think about that process, that he cares about. You're walking with him. You've been offended. You've gone to forgiveness. What he cares about, is your heart. And what he wants to bring is freedom. And he knows what's going on the other side.
Right.
If even moving into a opportunity to have that discussion is going to be harmful to you, because their heart is so hard that they're actually going to come harder against you.
Right.
Then he says, actually, right now, I don't want you to proceed that way. Wait until I give you the heads up, including maybe never. So, like with my, I think I shared this, and I wrote a book on forgiveness, actually, and I talked about this in the book. And my mom was very dominant and hostile and manipulative, and we had some issues, and I had to go to forgiveness. Since I'm an adult and married and have kids, and it's not good. It's unhealthy. And she's hurt me most of my life of just, kind of absurd, what I would call absurdity, And so, I came to a point where I said, okay, that's it. I'm not going to have any relationship with her. And God says, son, there is this thing called honoring your mother and father.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, what am I?
So how do I do that?
How am I going to do it? And he says, well, you got to go to forgiveness. Let me give you that. Show you that. So, release the need for her to do anything. Okay. I can do that, and I did. It took a while, by the way, because it wasn't easy. Received that, and then I said, okay, now what? I'm willing, and I kind of understood this about Ambassador. Okay, I'm willing to go talk to her. And God says to me, not a good idea.
Right.
If you do, you're going to set the whole thing backwards, because she's at a place where she's so defensive about it that she'll attack you even deeper, and you won't get anywhere. It'll make it worse. So no, that's not a good idea. Okay, what do you want me to do? Well, I want you to do it differently. I want you to set up a boundary and just start to build the relationship at a very, very surface level. And when and you talked about it, when she pushes the button, the pattern that was in me, which, by the way, I reacted to, because I didn't mind the fighting. She could hit me, and boom, I'm in. I'm going to go into the battle. He said, I gotta work on your heart,
right,
in a way that she's going to try to keep hitting your button. I'm going to heal you up so that it doesn't affect you anymore, and it rolls off of you, because you can release this, and let me help you with this. Okay. So it was a completely different pattern of we'll talk about this further, of resolution, of what to do with it, but it's not an automatic.
Right.
It's just that I have a heart to be used as a minister of reconciliation, and minister of reconciliation is I'm inviting you to go and talk through this in a respectful, honorable way, and I'd like to sit down with you and process it. And by the way, we can't force reconciliation, because that's on the other party. But,
right.
But rather, I can offer it. Why? Because I can talk truth with honor and respect. And he knows, again, is it dangerous? Remember, we talked about an ambassador that, no, I'm not going to send you there. Yeah, we have a message for them, but we're not going to send you there because it's too dangerous right now. Too dangerous for who?
Right.
For you. So, nope. Right now, no, that's not your call to fulfill that piece of being an ambassador. I may have you do something different, but don't let it become a system. But are you willing, primarily, always to, yes, let's go talk through it, if they have a heart to do that. And you would, because I don't consider it now the way the flesh will see that justice is going to be served anyway. And God's going to use me to deliver an opportunity, think about it, for them. And see, the end of that little phrase there in chapter 5 says, reconciliation to who? See, to Christ.
Right.
He says, that's why I want you to really get this, is it's not just you that this is about. This is about me. Are they willing to be reconciled to me?
Right.
How would they be reconciled to me? By processing the truth with you, that's my representative. And if they accept you and process with you, they're receiving me. If they reject you,
they're rejecting me.
They're rejecting me, and they're not reconciled to me, even though you're offering them. So think about that. You look past it to this issue per se, is, what you're really saying is about their heart. You want their heart to come to a place
right.
where they actually learn to follow you and learn the very same thing that I'm learning.
Yeah, and even as you say that, I'm struck by the reminder that we don't want to be on the other side of that either. Someone coming to us willing to reconcile, and we shut that down.
Yeah.
Because then we are also rejecting God in that.
That's right.
And so we need to be very careful how we walk that line and just staying with him and allowing him to lead us.
Yeah, and think about why would you always be willing to do that? What is required of you? See, forgiveness.
Right.
If I'm in forgiveness, really, even though I made the attempt, they said no. Okay.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in terms of what do we do with that. But and let's say they come back 3 months later. You know what? I would like to revalue this and reestablish something here. Would you be willing to do it? The answer automatically, see, is yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Why?
Because you have forgiven, then you're ready to go to reconciliation.
See, I've already released it. I'm always ready to go to truth all the time, anytime. Now, the other party has to determine whether that happens or not, or how much that happens. Because
Right.
I'm always
Now let's
I'm
back
always
up just a little bit though. That forgiveness, you say I'm always in forgiveness, always, for me anyway, that's not like a light switch turns and
No,
I'm there.
no.
It happens, and then God has to work that and grow that in me. And sometimes over and over and over again, especially when there's somebody who has a pattern of repeat, whatever, he continues to grow that. That's not just I'm choosing to forgive and boom, it's done.
No, that's
Often
correct.
there's a heart work that comes with it.
Well, yeah, and when I say that you're always in forgiveness, I'm talking about already on this particular person.
Yes, you've already gone to forgiveness on this.
I have processed that through, and
Yes.
remember, it's not a universal. Oh yeah, sure, I'm in forgiveness. No, it's very specific. It's to
Yes.
this offense, and it's not like, oh yeah, fine. It's because of the depth of it. I had I had a guy who wanted me to help him with his will and seeking God's will, and he got mad at me, and and the whole thing was oppressive to me, and I got mad too, and it took me a while to get to forgiveness. And then I said, what do I do? He said, be an ambassador of reconciliation, offer to talk. Okay. I call him up, I say, hey, would you be willing? I know you're mad, but would you be willing to talk? He says, I'm never talking to you again, and hung the phone up. Okay. Now, I had already processed forgiveness, released the requirement. He hadn't do anything. He did nothing. Okay. I'm done. I can live with this on reconciliation, which we'll talk about further. I'm okay with it. I'm done. I'm free of it. I can see him. I'm not oppressed by him. I'm not worried about him. I'm taking on the burden of it. Okay. Well, a year later, calls me up and says, hey, I know don't want to hear from me, but I would like to get together again and process this through. And my answer, immediately is sure.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that there's other people that I still struggle with unforgiveness. It's that I've worked it through.
That particular
this
issue
particular
with
person,
that person, yes.
I've worked that through. So when that person says I'm willing now, even a year later, yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Now, by the way, I'm not going to alter the truth. I'm not going to say what you did was fine. I'm going to say you offended me.
Right.
And here's why. And of course, he understood it. He says, I'm coming to you because I've been convicted that I offended you, and the way I did this was not right, and I'm so sorry. Okay, great. And then he said, would you now work with me and help me find out God's will? Yeah, sure. So that forgiveness isn't, I have it all the time for everything. It's going to be expressed person by person, situation by situation. And some of them are, it's easy to receive. And by the way, the more you do it, it's easier to receive it. But other ones, man, this is tough. I'm really struggling with forgiveness. And okay, God says, let me work with you. Let me give your heart. Let me get you to that place. I'm going to give you my forgiveness. You receive it. Okay. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. It just once you have it, now you can offer truth. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow as we get into the depth of what do you do when you've offered this. Just kind of like I described it, is you've offered this, or you have been told this person isn't going to receive this, so don't even bother offering it. Well, what do I do? Because we're in conflict.
And I want to be in peace.
I'd like to be reconciled, but they're not willing to, or God says it's not a good idea that you even consider it. Well, what do I do now? That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Well, what do I do?
Excellent.
What do I do now? So that'll be a fun discussion. So
that sounds great.
We pray as you process this that as you're trying to understand this message and be an ambassador is send us questions. Let us know anything that's on your mind of, well, how does it work, and what about this? You may even have a situation that you'd like to describe to us and say, what do I do with this one? And we'd be happy to process that. Send us questions on the YouTube, or questions at afjministry.com, questions@afjministry.com. And this whole issue, which we're going to spend some time on here, is how do we overcome worry, fear, and anxiety when we have these really difficult relationship issues?
Right.
How are those going to resolve?
Because they definitely feed it. Yeah.
Have it. So we'll pick this up again tomorrow.
Excellent. Looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us, everyone. If you have enjoyed today, be a friend and tell a friend. Continue to join our podcast and grow the following. And we are excited to see what God is going to do through this in the upcoming year. So
Amen.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, Kathy, we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.